Welcome to Lost My Notes podcast with Ybot. What you just heard was actually recorded by our guest today. And today we have Ant Chapman, who we call Ant. You might know him from his band Arndales and the very legendary Collapsed Lung and others, which we're going to hear about today. Ant recorded this, actually. Ant recorded this for us. It kicks ass. We just talked about, we wish it was on vinyl, but maybe someday. And he's here, and welcome, and thanks for coming, man.
My pleasure, guys.
We know you for a while now, over a year, but we want to know more about your musical journey and all that.
Yeah.
Because you talk about so many bands and music that I'm sure we can fill this time.
Oh, I'm sure.
Well,
yeah. I'll probably forget loads of stuff as well.
My voice is pretty crap from a cold. So I'm hoping you do most of the talking. And
I'll do my best.
I don't think there's a problem with that.
Yeah, I could chip in as well. You know.
Go on then. All right, so
yeah,
you asked some questions.
So basically, you started getting involved in music very early on when you're still a teenager.
Yeah. So when I was 16, I was always really into music. First music that I, properly got into, as in I actively wanted to go out and hunt it down and find it was like hip hop and electro, and we're talking like pretty early 80s. We're probably talking about 83, 84. So when I was kind of 12, that kind of age. I think a lot of people have got a similar kind of story, which is that they can remember the moment when everything changed.
Yeah.
And for me, I can see it crystal clear. It was like in the kitchen at my mum's.
Yeah.
On a Sunday afternoon with a little black Ferguson radio on and with the charts on.
And Roland Rat came on.
It wasn't Roland Rat. It was a little bit before that, I think. But it was Buffalo Gals, the Malcolm McLaren record.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
So which is a bit of a weird, in to hip-hop. But actually, it's I think it's what that record was intended to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just literally was just in the kitchen while I think my mum was making tea, and I'm just totally gobsmacked and just couldn't believe what I was hearing, and I just literally never heard anything like that before, because that's got it's got a little bit of rap on it. I think I might have already, I'd probably already heard Rapture by Blondie and Rapper's Delight, which would probably be the most obvious examples of stuff like that people would hear just in the mainstream. But I would have been really young, so it probably, the irony is that it probably wouldn't have even seemed that unusual. You know what I mean? But at this point, hearing that record, and especially the scratching and the beatbox and just the sort of the complete madness of it, and how loads of it's not even musical, and it was just something in my head just went just exploded. And to me, that moment then, that's basically led me to everything that I've done. Even, whether or not it's hip hop or electronic stuff or it's guitar stuff or whatever, it's all from that moment.
Right.
And so I was always really into music, buying records whenever I could when I got a bit older. And then I knew I wanted to do something in music, but I wasn't really a musician in the kind of trad way. Music at school, everything at school I just wasn't interested in. I didn't persevere with anything.
At school they try and hit you with the theory of it, don't
exactly,
you?
Yeah. And of course now I'm I wish I knew a bit more about that. But at the time it's the wrong time, I think when you're 13, 14, I think that's totally the wrong time.
Did you have instruments at home?
No, we never. Oh well, actually, you know what? That's not entirely true. I've still got it, a Casio MT40, and the Casio MT40 is, and that I've got a feeling we might have just inherited it off somebody, somebody my mum knew at work. Gave it to her and said, "Oh, your boy," because I got a younger brother. "Oh, your boy's all like this." And the thing about the MT40 is the Casio that's got the slang tang rhythm on it. That's like a preset on that. So when all those records started appearing, I'm freaking out because I'm like, hang on a minute, and I go home, get the Casio out, there it is. Like, I think
Wow.
it's slow rock. It's like that preset. So yeah, there was, I'd play around with keyboards and stuff like that. And then the other thing I remember is I had a ghetto blaster, Hitachi like ghetto blaster, and it had this thing on the front of it called a mini jack socket, and it was a mixing mic. So basically, it was like an input that you could plug a mic into or anything on a mini jack, and then a gain level for it, and you could then mix that with whatever you were playing from the first tape deck, and you could like mix the two together.
Nice.
So straight away, I was
Experimenting and
I was doing some really primitive. I'm just a kid, and I'm just playing around with like bits of records. Yes, but
Did you record any of that?
I did, but I long lost to the
Cassettes?
mist of time. But I would do stuff like I would try and do like my own little remixes of things where you would just record different bits and doing pause button loops. So just recording a bit and pausing it and again. So I guess this was kind of like where I started to really, I don't know. It was just the sort of I couldn't quite figure out how I was going to turn that into actually being involved in music. And then for me, there's also, so fast forward a few years, I've kind of finished school with basically no qualifications. I've gone to college, and everyone said, "Oh, you'll like college. It's totally different from school." I hated it. It was exactly the same as school, just you didn't wear a uniform. That was the only difference. And I can still remember. This would have been when I was still at school. There used to be a TV show on Friday nights on Channel 4 called The Tube.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
So the Tube's like legendary, legendary TV show, and for many years everything that was on there would be live, So and so if they had bands that they wanted to go on and they couldn't do something live, they would have to film a video.
Yeah.
And there's a band Stump, who are like a kind of mid to late 80s, based in London band, although half the band were from Ireland. And amazing band, completely. I mean, and basically they made a video for one of their tracks, this track called Buffalo, and honestly, that was it was like that Buffalo Girls thing. It was just like just mind blown, and it's very kind of Captain Beefhearty. Kev Hopper, the bass player, is just incredible. Plays fretless bass, but does like weird rhythmic stuff with it. I know Kev now as well, and he's an absolute top bloke, like really good. He's an amazing musician, still making music all the time. But that was basically, it was almost like the Buffalo Girls thing when I was like really young, primed me, and then the Stump thing just that was it. I was off. So I was just like going out looking for anything that I could kind of get involved in. And so I was really lucky growing up in this town, Harlow in Essex, which is not what you would think of as like a cultural hotspot. It's
No, I mean I've
No.
been there quite a few times myself.
I've moored
It's
there.
mostly known for its like Laser Quest and things like that.
What do you call it? Yeah, it's just it's one of those new cities, isn't it? Well,
It's a new town,
The
yeah.
old town's really nice.
But
then
it's a new
the
town. Yeah,
town
Harlow's
is-
a new town,
yeah.
and so we I was born in the northeast. I was born in Sunderland, but we the whole family we moved down when I was like 5, basically because there was no jobs. My mum needed a job, so she got a job at Matchbox, the toy car company. So of course with 2 young boys, they were just it was
Did
just
she
like
bring
your mum's
you-
got the she brought
Do you
loads.
still have
home.
them?
Some, but they're all wrecked. And of course, she goes on the internet and she looks at how much they would be worth
Now.
if they were in good condition.
buy, like, all
We're
new
"Oh
gear
my
with
gosh." But in Harlow there was a venue called the Square. When I was growing up, it was
I've
called
been.
Square One, and there was this venue called the Square. And originally it was set up by I think it was originally the local council that set it up, but by the time I got involved in it, it was the county council who were kind of funding it. And Essex County Council's famously like been a Tory council for many years. So it's always a place like the Square, which was basically a hotbed of sort of lefties and creative people and just weirdos in general.
I've been there. I was there like in 2000, and then again a few years ago.
Yeah, and it's an amazing place. Of course, it's all got. This is all past tense because it's gone now. It's
gone.
literally it closed finally. I think about 2 years
Did they
ago.
bulldoze it?
It's all been bulldozed now.
I
Yeah,
haven't been past
but
it.
now they've said that the plan for housing that was going to go on it has all been delayed. So basically, they could have had the venue open for like another 3 years, and they just...
It was so stupid.
Yeah. So, but the great thing about that place, I mean, it was super inclusive, and I would just go and sit. And early on, I was just going on random evenings to just see what was on, and I saw some really ropey, like, you know, even then, I was like, oh no, I don't like this. Like, you know, kind of like Essex goth bands.
It was like your CBGBs to mine.
Kind of, yeah.
Teenage. Yeah.
But then basically, I was at college, and you know, there was people would book the venue to put events on, and I was thinking, well, I could probably do that. And then if I did that, I could play my records really loud, like, because they had like a little DJ set up. So that was basically what got me started. And then I went, and again with that band, Stump, went to see them in the summer of '88. And there was a band on first called Stitch Back Foot Airmen, who later changed their name to Stitch, who I just loved, and I'd already bought records by, and I just literally wrote to them like a letter to the address that they had on there, saying, would you want to come and play? And then they called me back, and they were like, yeah. And then put first gig on with them and a couple of other bands. And basically that was the beginning of about, I'd say on and off, best part of like 10 years of putting gigs on in one form or another at the Square. Right. And through that, you know, I booked bands like, I mean, the one that people always remember from up there is Seymour, who's the band that then became Blur. Right. So they kind of completely by accident at the last minute they ended up playing, and then I videoed it just on a handheld video camera, and then that ended up in the movie, the documentary about them. Right. And through all this, there was a band from Epping near Harlow called Pregnant Neck, and I kind of got to know them. I saw them, and then I was like, oh, come and play one of my gigs. I really liked what they were doing. Again, it was a kind of a really, I want to say. You can't really say Captain Beefheart because it was all really untrained. It was a bit more punk rock than that. It was just really like
just try it, just let it go with whatever.
Yeah. And they were funny as well. Like the singer was just really funny. Like the lyrics were quite amusing. And then their lineup changed a bit. Like the bass player moved to the drummer left, the bass player moved to drums, and then they said to me, oh, would you want to come and play bass? And by that time I'd bought like a cheap bass and was just mucking around on it. So that was the beginning. I'd say that's probably the true beginning of properly being involved in music. Recorded a couple of records.
Excuse me, how old were you?
When I joined Pregnant Neck, I would have probably been 18 or 19. Right. So yeah, like the first gig I put on. I mean, strictly speaking, I was putting gigs on when I wasn't old enough to be like
in the venue.
In the venue, yeah. So, but you know, I think the way they looked at it was better that people like me were there doing that than just out wandering the streets or whatever, you know. And it kind of I'm conscious that I don't want to just kind of go into like an hour long.
No, it's good.
But that's the kind of genesis.
Yeah,
of it. That you know.
Don't rush.
And through that, I guess that was a sort of a way in to a lot of areas of music which I still am part of today. I would include you guys in that as well.
In what?
In that sort of, it's not a scene, but just to me, it's almost like in somewhere there's like a family tree. Well, not a family tree, like a link document. You know, like what's that thing people do? Mind maps. You know, people. I see it in education, like where people have like iPads and they make mind maps where it's like little things that they've talked about in lessons and they connect it to other stuff. And I just feel like that with me. There's all the people that I've worked with over the years, and there is like links between
sort of
everyone.
Thread,
Definitely.
Yep.
I'm going to hold back a second because you guys might want to ask something else.
And they're all different, like you said, link. Like I feel like us and Arndales, especially, totally different from each other. Yeah. But then each band is totally different from everything else.
Yep.
And
like I can't. Well, with Arndales, I've been to loads of gigs, and I've seen a lot of bands that fall roughly within sort of indie rock or whatever you want to call it, but they just sound like they're just following a formula that's been set out. Well, you guys are just totally not doing it. You're just rejecting all of that, and it's a very, very. It's almost hard to describe. It's like it works. It's like that weird thing where it works when it's like it's going against what should work, but it does work, you know.
Right down to visually, like if you walked into Arndales in the middle of a set and with blindfold on, and you'd be, wow, I would be like, and then you open your eyes, you see, and what are these guys called? 3 guys with glasses and a guy with a beard.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can tell. Maybe we can tell to the listener all the we met because
Yeah, so we played at the Sea Bright Arms, November 2017.
Yeah, last year.
Yeah.
And
it was.
No, was it last year or was it early? Was it earlier than that? No, it was last year.
Yeah.
And we got that gig through our our alleged booking agency. And hey Steve, and we walked in on.
Is that Steve Strange?
Yeah. I love Steve.
I've worked with many years ago. You won't remember me, but I booked a few things in the 90s from him.
He's just a bit of needle there.
And we walked in on the sound check. I thought, wow, this is very professional. You guys were up there really quiet, like you weren't talking, but you were really like checking everything. And I thought, oh, this is really pro.
Yeah.
And then and it was great sound, and the sound man was, and it was a great gig. And then you two had a common connection through your mom performing on Collapsed Lung.
So that was just the maddest.
And then
thing.
then you got us on Art Rocker Radio like 2 weeks later, and or a few weeks later, and because our last band, who you hear in the background, me and Dudu, we were on Art Rocker years ago, and blah blah. So it was all these connections, and that was a great gig. It's when I fell in love with you guys, with your band, and so that's how we met. And then we heard Ant was recording engineer and teaching recording and and we wanted him to record us.
Yeah, still to this day, like both of the bands that you played in are like the best bands that I've come on before, you know.
Thank you very much.
Definitely, blow everything else out of the water.
Well, the Collapsed Lung gig the other week, honestly, so many people were just like, "Oh, Wybot were fucking great!" Like, you know, seriously, people were really into it.
We were pumped for that gig because it was. We wanted to get the audience going for you, but also, just when we came out to play, there was energy in the room.
Yeah.
And most of the time in London, it's like
No.
going into a funeral place.
Well, because everybody's seen everything, or they think they've seen everything. You know. I was talking to somebody about this the other day because I was talking about somebody was asking how the Collapsed Lung tour went, and I was saying, oh well, you know, Glasgow was amazing. Huddersfield was really good, like really unexpectedly good. It was a great venue that as well, the Parish in Huddersfield. And then I was like, oh, London was brilliant. Like London was better than we expected. But the thing about Glasgow is, it's weird that I just find it's like the most musically literate city, in as much as like pretty much whatever you do, whatever you're into, there is an audience there for it. And it's so much smaller than London. Like it's actually a pretty small city. I mean, in fact, people I know who live there complain about that because sometimes they get a bit claustrophobic in like the music scene.
Smaller than Brighton?
No, bigger than Brighton, but you know, Brighton's full of people from London, so that's, they probably think it's
funeral parlour again.
Probably think it's bigger. But no, Jim from Collapsed Lung lives in Brighton, and I always kind of mock Brighton a little bit. Kind of lovingly, you know. But Glasgow's weird, like, you know. And the thing about London is, because you'd think, well, look at the size of London, look how much culture there is there. Surely that must be the place where there's like the best audience, and actually I don't think it is, because and partly it's because everything's so fractured, like because there's so much going on, you know, and also living in London is absolutely exhausting.
It's exhausting.
Exactly. You get back by the end of the day, even if you get back at 6, and all you want to do is have your food and just crash out.
Veg out on your iPhone.
Genuinely, and I genuinely think that's a huge impact on not just on music but on culture in general, because if you don't have a livable city, it makes it really hard to kind of build an audience.
People just surviving at the moment.
We played what was it? Was it St. Albans we played, and there was a kids band, was the first band, it was their first gig, and it was 4 teenagers, 2 girls and 2 boys, and they were like 16, and I mean the moms helped them carry the drums in and all, and we're there like these old fart professionals, and we're helping them.
And that's what we're used to. It's like when we came on of Arndales, we were used to just like every Tom, Dick and Harry, whatever kind of band, and then you guys come on and we're like, shit, this is what, you know, these are the kind of bands that we want to be playing with, you know. We want that excitement. We want to feel like, oh, I would just love to be here for this gig, even if I wasn't playing. Like, you know, that's what we've, going to these other random ones. Like,
but my point was, we played out. It was not far from London. It was a kid's first gig night, which was great because there's 1 million kids there, so there was built-in audience, and they loved us, and we got treated well, and we got drinks tickets, and we got discount on the meal. Like in France, you get 3 meals and everything. Yeah. But that was just
nice,
a step outside of London, getting treated so much better than here. We'll get treated well here.
How many girls were yelling and
screaming? It was not for us, just to scream full stop, because they were out. They were actually out doing something.
It was like, it was like.
So to your point, outside of London, in the UK, you seem to get treated better than.
I think I mean, the thing is, I don't live in London, and I only ever lived in London for like 2 years, along like the early 2000s. But I do kind of consider myself almost a Londoner, because I'm like, I work here, and I've done so much stuff here, you know, and do gigs here and blah blah blah, and I mean, I think it's the same for everybody. It's such a love-hate relationship with it, because there's so much going on here,
too much,
and especially in terms of work, you know, it's very hard to escape the gravitational pull, because it's where it all is. But living here, oh man, it's like it's such
tough.
A bummer.
New York's the same.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, again, people I know who live or have lived in New York have told me the same thing.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Like here, you're in Bucks, I'm in Hearts.
Yeah. It's just a bit easier. I mean, it's still, don't get me wrong. I think there's nowhere within like 50 miles of London where it's easy. You know what I mean? But it's like easier. Yeah. And I don't know. It's always a balancing act between, you know, are the benefits of being in London or closer to London worth it? You know, and I know I'm 46 now, and I know finally it's not for me. For some people it is. You know, I know people who are my age and have lived in London for like 25 years, and I know other younger people. I know, you know, I'll teach in London, and there's students who live here, and I don't know how they do it, but you know, good luck to them. I just know for me it's I can't do it. Do it,
it's
you know.
Pressure pot.
Yeah.
So going back to with your music, so like you've been playing so with Pregnant Neck from when you were like late teenager.
Yeah.
But the origins of what first got you into music was primarily like, you know, kind of hip hop, but experimental hip hop. So when you started to get together with Nihal and these guys, so the first version of Collapsed Lung,
so that's it. I mean, the thing is,
I was gonna say, sorry. I was just gonna just ask, because with Collapsed Lung, like you are a hip hop band, but you've always been totally on your own tangent, so much so that there isn't even other bands that you can really link to it. Really, it's
exactly. The one band that really they're like the band that we always wished we could have been, was New Kingdom, and we ended up touring with them, which was just amazing. And we know Nasaj or Jason for and we hopefully are going to get him on a track at some point.
That'd be amazing. Yeah.
But they're just, you know, that was always what we wanted to do. But the thing is, I think what makes us like them is that there's nobody else like us, and there's nobody else like them. We're totally different from each other. Yeah. But what I realised after years was, oh, hang on, we're both like kind of really singular in totally different ways. Yeah. They're like, you know, wildly psychedelic and really experimental. But with us, it's more, you know, I think it took us a long time to kind of actually realise we're actually like a pop group. You know what I mean? Like, it's pop music, and I mean that in the most in the best way.
Yeah, like all your choruses are something that people can always like. They can get into straight away. Yeah, you don't have to sit there working it out, and you know, it's immediate. Yeah.
And I mean, I think you know, with my students when I teach, I always say to them, I prime them. I say, when I'm teaching, I'll probably refer to pop music. When I say pop music, I just mean anything that's got a melody and lyrics. You know, a beat, a melody, and lyrics. Like, it could be anything. It could be metal. It could be hip hop, it could be R&B, it could be whatever, you know, anything and all points in between. But I think it just took us a while to kind of realise that, and also it just took us a while to get better. But like you were saying about kind of when it started out, I mean, me with Pregnant Neck was probably only like, I don't know, like a year or something like that, or just over a year. Yeah. And we made there was 2 records, one of which was like a 7-inch 4 tracks with it. I played on 2, and then there was an album. And of course, now knowing what I know, I'm like, God, I wish I could go back in time knowing how this all works. I literally was just in the studio with the bass, barely knowing how to play, never mind, like, you know, what was going on in the studio. You know, and I might have said, guys, maybe one day in a little studio in Kilburn to record the whole album and mix it might not be the best option. But you know, John Peel really loved both the records, and we never we were never able to get in to do a session, which was a real shame. But basically, kind of without going into any details, there was kind of a weird breakdown of relationship between me and the rest of the band, which, to be honest, I never quite fully understood. I don't think anybody did. But the really sad thing was that when the album came out, so the album was due to come out on a certain date, and I think it was like in November. Then it got delayed, and it came out in like February. And the night of the day it was released, the guitarist committed suicide. So in April, which is like so grit. It was just awful. I can still remember somebody calling me the next day to tell me, and just, you know, I've never had a phone call like that before or since. And my first reaction was that they were joking, that because it was just so weird. I was like, what, is this a joke, you know? But yeah, so it was a weird thing that the album almost became like a posthumous thing, because he you know, you could tell that he'd planned this. This was like what he wanted. It was really, really awful. Right. But because that was only, sorry to be a bummer, but you know, because it was such a short thing, coming out of that, I ended up sort of not really knowing what I wanted to do, and I wasn't really thinking too much about playing bass at that time. And then around that kind of time, it was the Amiga computer, the Commodore Amiga computer, and with that you could actually do really rudimentary sampling. And there was this program called Med, which was like a tracker, so it's like a really, really basic sequencer where you could do samples and like just these 4 tracks and trigger them off. And so I started to play around with that, and in fact I actually played around with it at a friend's house, and then just got a computer, and then the little dongle thing that you had to use to get samples in. And then there was a guy who I think really, I didn't really know him. He was a friend of my brother, and this guy Steve, and we got chatting at the square, and then he was saying he had an Amiga and he had Med as well. But we're like totally different people, because he's like, at that time especially, he was very much a rock guy, you know, loved, especially prog, loved a bit of prog. And we were just like, and I was just like, well, why don't we just do some tracks together and then just do a stupid live show, like kind of a joke, just a silly thing. Yeah. And so that was the first Collapsed Lung show, where it was literally me and him on stage. He was playing guitar, I had the Amiga, and then a little 4-track where I was doing like interludes between the songs while I loaded the next song off floppy disks on the Amiga. Wow. And then that went well. Funnily enough, that first gig that we did, the band that was on before us was a band from Harlow called Head Swirl, and the singer and guitarist in Head Swirl was Paul Epworth, who's the producer who does Adele, and he's like Oscar and Grammy winner. Yeah. So because Paul was like from around that area, I think he's like a year younger than me, and I actually did demos for Head Swirl, and I wish I could find them. Yeah. But he probably is glad that I can't. But yeah. So and then we did another show, and Nihal was the year above me at school, and really good rapper, big charming personality. You know, everyone's mum knew Nihal. Do you know what I mean? Like, because they were always such a lovely boy. Because
he's got that personality now still for TV and radio.
Exactly, and that's the thing. He's ended up in exactly the right place. He's found his calling. He's ended, you know, and absolutely no disrespect to him whatsoever. I couldn't do what he does. No way. It's amazing. But anyway, I just remember talking to him and saying, would you want to come and just do some like freestyle rhymes over some of these stupid beats? And he's like, yeah, sure. And I don't think we ever played him anything before the gig. He just turned up. And Steve Lamacq, who was writing at NME at the time, was
Yeah.
at the gig. He's got big links with Harlow as well, because he kind of did his certainly some of his journalism training he did in Harlow, and he used to put gigs on at the Square sometimes. And he wrote a review, and then this being like 1992, well maybe early 93, it was still an era where if your band got mentioned in NME, basically every A&R or scout, it was their job to like contact you.
Yeah.
So we'd done a demo, and me and Steve worked in the same place, and we put our office number on it. And so we ended up we couldn't work because there was like A&R from every record company, like literally all day. I mean, I'm saying this now. Now you imagine this nowadays. This is just like unheard of. You know what I mean? Like you basically would have to go and like put something in someone's face, like to get a reaction out of it. But literally, there was this whole tranche of people for whom that was their job. They had to basically get on the phone to these bands.
Yeah.
And and
fingers on the pulse.
Yeah, and amazingly, we got offered Go Discs offered us for a band who had never made a record and barely had any songs. What was actually a really big deal. And me and Steve were like, hang on a minute, this doesn't seem right. Amazingly, I don't know why we thought that, but we just both were just like, this seems a bit crazy, because the deal came and it was like 7 albums. You know what I mean? It was just like
that was the trap.
Yeah, exactly. And we were just Neo, I think, felt a bit differently about it, because I think he thought that looks like stability. You know what I mean? That looks like a plan, something to go for. And I think we just thought, well, we don't even know what we're doing or if this is what we want to do.
Right.
So we were just like, let's hold back a bit on it. Yeah. And what we ended up doing.
Do you think he was ready to jump into like something that was going to be a big commitment?
I think so. And honestly, I'm not saying this to like disrespect him at all. Like, it's just totally, I think he just looked at it a different way. Yeah. And maybe, I mean, who knows? Maybe part of it is because for a few years I'd been putting on gigs. I'd been getting to know a load of bands. I'd been going to see, I'd seen your mum's band, God knows how many times, you know, and all the people that she and the rest of the band knew, like Silverfish and all this lot, you know. And a lot of those guys would have deals and would get involved with labels. So I'd think maybe I'd like heard stories, do you know what I mean? And kind of something had sunk in about maybe thinking maybe this isn't the best way to approach this. And also, but honestly, the other thing was I was just like, I don't even know if this is what we want to do, you know, because as soon as we saw that, it's like, well, this is kind of like a job, you know, which of course in a lot of ways is good, but then it's like, well, I don't even know if I want to do that, you know. It's like being offered a job.
Great position to be in.
Yeah. But it's like being offered a job.
To your commitment.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
when you're that young as well, it's like you're still figuring out who you are.
Yeah. So Steve Lamacq and a couple of other guys had set up Deceptive Records, and literally we were the first thing that they released. And Steve had said to us, well, why don't we just do 2 singles and then see how it goes? And
is this Steve who's in your band now?
No, this is Steve Lamacq, who is the Six Music presenter. And they said, let's just do 2 singles, see how it goes, and maybe do an album, or maybe you go off and do an album with someone else, or let's just say no commitment at all. And the 2 singles went really well, especially the first one. Got loads of play on the radio, but I think Niall was very much more interested in doing a proper deal, but also he had stuff before us. So he already had, like, there's a guy Colt and Alex who like he'd been working with for years, making tunes.
He put a few records out.
Yeah, and you know, and it's totally understandable. He's thinking, well, and Go Discs were like, well, maybe we'd be interested in doing that. So in the end, he went to do that. So we had to find somebody else, and that's how we Jim. Yeah. And the thing, the beauty of that is that Jim is of exactly the same sort of outlook as me and Steve, you know, and Johnny as well, who ended up coming in to play bass. Like, we've all got a very similar outlook and a very similar sort of sensibility. We fit together. That's not to say we're all the same, you know, but it's like we fit together really, really well. And it's, you know, and other than that, really, it was like the same story as for like hundreds of other bands of the 90s, which is like that sort of releasing 2 albums. Yeah. and everything gradually kind of like petering out at the end.
Yeah.
But the difference with us was we had this one song which, for
Still,
various reasons, exploded.
All you need.
And it's still 20 years you could still hear it. Compilations everywhere, you know.
It's so weird. It's
well,
so
adverts. So just keeps getting. So,
yeah. I mean, the situation that led to that was weird, which was basically someone at an ad agency in Amsterdam, a British guy, but this ad agency in Amsterdam, on our album it had our studio phone number on it, and we had our answer phone number. And we came in one day and there was an answer phone message from this guy.
Yeah.
And basically, he wanted us to call him about this Coca-Cola advert, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So I rang him up, and he explained basically they were pitching for the Euro '96 campaign, and they were desperate for music, and they couldn't think of anything to use. And he went to the record shop round the corner, and he saw our first album, which had Subbuteo players on the front.
Yeah.
And on the back, he saw one of the tracks was called "Eat My Goal," so he bought the album.
The album being Jackpot Goalie. Yeah.
So he bought the album and was like, "Yeah, we got to use that." And so literally, it was just like, because we put our number on there, he was able to get straight in touch with us.
Right.
And then we were able to go to the record company and the publisher and go, "Look, talk to these guys because I think this is like the real deal."
Yeah.
And then, of course, down the line, the record company and the publisher went around going, "Oh, isn't it amazing, this thing that we got for Collapsed Lung?"
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's not strictly speaking the way it happened.
Do nothings.
Yeah, but so, you know, we re-recorded it, we changed the lyrics a tiny bit, we just made it sound a bit better. The version on the first album is really rough, but the one that came out as a single is a lot tighter.
Yeah.
And I think it sold, I'm sure I got told it sold 50,000 copies in Britain.
Right.
So I think that's across 2 releases. So, but yeah, it's
and it's a song that like when I say, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this thing with Collapsed Lung," and they're like, "Collapsed Lung," and I'm like, "Yeah, Eat My Goal," and they're like, "Eat My Goal," and I just sing them the little guitar line, and they know it straight away. Like it's so identifiable.
It's weird, and so it did really well, but then it also basically kind of killed the band to all intents and purposes, in terms of it was just impossible. Like,
was that what other people expected more
kind
of
that? But also it just made it impossible to like promote the album, and because it was like the single came out, then the album, but the song wasn't on the album,
right?
So they were thinking, do we do this? We add it as a bonus track, we do the and it was so desperate, it was so craven. Like, you know, they just couldn't do it, and it was a real shame, because the second album we were so proud of. Like, we really like poured everything into that.
Well, I was gonna ask about that, because with the first album, like, to me, it sort of had more of like a kind of a guitar sound through it, and it was almost kind of like spiky guitar kind of, you know. Well, you could say, oh yeah, that's kind of like rap rock, but, you know, more of a sort of indie sort of slant of it. But
we were never good enough to be actual rap rock. That's the thing. Right. We were never like the kind of band, we couldn't play that well.
But to be fair, a lot of, you know, actual rap rock bands, their songs are not that interesting.
Exactly.
So, yeah. But then with Cooler, your second album, that kind of went down more of a kind of a cinematic sort of kind of sound. Like it had like a lot of, to me, sort of kind of John Barry-ish kind of like melodies and things that, you know, were very it was more almost like a lounge kind of sound.
It was very much of its time. It was the kind of things that we were all enjoying at the time, and, you know, and it also, I'm not going to lie, that was quite a commercial thing at the time, those kind of melodies, those kind of sounds, you know, especially, I mean, like, obviously the 2 tracks with your mum on. Not wanting to turn this into like Toby's mum's podcast, but the 2 tracks, you know, those 2 tracks, we were so pleased with them, and it was almost like when we did the music, we were kind of like, we can't spoil this with just having like Jim on it. Like, and this was Jim who was saying this. It's like, we have to have something a bit nicer. And then Johnny was like, "Oh, I think I might know somebody." Yeah. And at the time, that was like a humongous coup. But in the studio, it was like no big deal. It was like it was one of the easiest sort of sessions I've ever done in my life. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
You know, I'd never seen Collapse Along, or didn't even hear of you guys until we met you at the Arndales gig, and he told me about Collapse Along. Then I did my own research and listened to everything. So when we played the gig with you, I'd never seen you. And to comment on Jim, I've never seen a frontman who's equal parts on the stage in this performance, a frontman and a fan at the same time. It's amazing. Because he's up there as the frontman, but he's also so into it that he's like a fan of the band that he's actually performing with at the same time. And he's kind of like football, like a young guy's football coach too. He's very like, come on. And I was really impressed. I was impressed by all the band as a whole and individually. We've known Steve too, and we never seen him play. And I was like, whoa.
Steve's great.
And the drummer's tight. The bass player's wow.
Yeah, Johnny.
He kicks out.
Yeah, Johnny was in when he was younger. Johnny was in a really fantastic band called. Well, originally they were called Death by Milk Float, but then they changed them to Milk Float, and they're really like a totally underappreciated sort of mid to late '80s angular kind of spiky kind of band. Really big. They did. I mean, I think they did at least one John Peel session. They were bit, but they were amazing band. Really brilliant.
Our soundman David, who's been around the world. He knew when at the gig they hooked up, and he's like, I used to do sound for Milk Float.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I think he said. I think Johnny was saying like he engineered their first recordings.
That's right.
And then Johnny as well is good friends with Ajay's Cigar as well, and his Ajay's first band, Dandelion Adventure,
who I put on several times. Harlow. So that's how I know Ajay. So,
and there's that thread of like John Peel. Both of you guys were, both your bands were big with them, but they also kind of formed out of like, let's just have a joke and go on stage and just see what happens.
Well, that was because there was that documentary, wasn't there, the little Radio 4 thing about like when the first Dandelion Adventure gig, where it's like they booked the gig but they didn't have any songs or anything. It's like great,
and
cool.
it's amazing that in that time period of the the late 80s, music was going that experimental at stage, and that wasn't, then as the 90s went on and it kind of changed, and a lot of bands that became less, experimental, because it was like, well, hang on, what if an A&R's here and what if they think that's going to sound weird?
I think back then, like before then, the bands like Dandelion Adventure, that kind of school of thought was kind of like, there's no possibility that this is going to be a commercial thing, so let's just do exactly what we think is like the best, and I guess it was an aspect of the way music went, was being in a band became viable again, so record deals, kind of like pre-Britpop, you know what I mean, leading into Britpop. It was very much like there was almost like a feeding frenzy, I mean, it's actually, I think a lot of it's tied into like, Nirvana and the early 90s in America, all the major labels in America. I mean, you can see every single alternative rock band who had put out a half-decent record from like 1987 to like 1990 ended up with a major deal of some kind. And some of them actually ended up going on to make their best record. I love them. I don't know if you guys know Shudder to Think.
Of course.
I really...
My band opened for them back then in the early 90s.
And I think their record that they did on their major deal, I think is actually their best record by a long way.
After Discord.
And but some of the other bands who ran that time, it's great. No, they're all great. Yeah, I saw them a couple of times in London. They're absolutely brilliant. There's a legendary. Sorry to go off on a tangent. A legendary bill that was at Brixton Academy in 1991. I think it was 91. Which was Fugazi, the Jesus Lizards, Shudder to Think, and Leatherface. And Leatherface, who I love those. They're from Sunderland, like where I was born, but they're also like one of the very best punk rock bands ever.
I bought that. I didn't know they're from England I've had their album. I didn't even
Yeah,
know they're
so
from
good.
England until, well, kind of can hear it in their accent.
Yeah.
So
But
But that
they
gig
fit
just,
in with all those bands.
Just to
really
say that bill at Brixton Academy, £5 for a ticket.
wow, fucking hell,
well. Well, it was Fugazi back then. It was
Yeah, it
$5.
was amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
that's
Yeah.
crazy, man.
Yeah.
And
So, oh yeah,
Go.
yeah, I've got a question regarding your second album. Did you, because we know you're a producer now, I mean, did you produce and mix your own album?
Yeah, to a certain degree. So I would say at that point, so the second Collapsed Lung album, we were working with, there was an engineer called Fulton Dingley, who we used to do loads of recording at a studio called Blackwing in Southwark, which is like was, because it's been gone a very long time. It was in a church in Southwark, in Borough. And it's kind of a legendary studio. If you see you'll see it credited on so many records, like especially early Mute records, like Yazoo's. Is it Yazoo's? I can't remember. It's the first album. Is it Upstairs at Eric's by Yazoo? Eric is the guy who started Blackwing.
Right.
So they did that there. Loads of 4AD. There was some Pixies stuff done there, like tons and tons, and then like us and the Stereo. In fact, I'm pretty sure the Stereo Lab record that's behind you, loads of the stuff on that was done at Blackwing as well.
Right.
And we used to work with the engineer there, Fulton, who was amazing. This guy Fulton Dingley, he's in LA now, sensibly working in TV and film, I think. So
Right.
he actually gets paid for doing what he does.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when we did the second album, we decided to do it a different way, rather than spending loads of money on studio time. Because remember, back at that point, the only way you really made a record, if it was anything like a band, the only way you really made a record was by going to a proper studio.
Yes.
And we spent so much money on the first record, and I was never happy with like the way it sounded, mainly because we just didn't really know what we were doing. And so we decided to spend money on making our own little studio for like writing the stuff and demoing, and then recording at a studio in the Fortress where our little room was,
Right.
which was cheaper, and then we would just pay Fulton to come and engineer it.
Yeah.
And when it came to mixing it, then I was kind of like, I would say I was probably doing like 75% of it, because by that time I was really into the mixing side of it.
Yeah.
I would be assisted by Fulton. He'll
Yeah.
probably be horrified if he heard me say that. But yeah, and it was around that time where, I mean, even before then, at the Square in Harlow, where they had a little studio, I was already into like working in the studio, doing demos with. I mean, a lot of my early recording work was literally I'd get called, oh, there's a band coming in on Sunday to do a demo. Can you do it? Yeah, and basically because no one else wanted to work on a Sunday, so
Right.
I'd be in the studio, and I'd literally have no idea who was coming in. So it would be like, a metal band or a country and western band or whatever, doing like demos onto the little 8-track there. But so by the time of that second album, 96, yeah, I was getting a lot more involved in the production in terms of like ideas, and I mean a lot of the, I'd say a lot more of the tracks on. Actually, I would have to sit and look at the track list and think about it. But in terms of, because the thing with Collapsed a lot of the time is like with the first two records is who kind of started the beat, because that was always the start of the record, was like the beat,
Right.
and it would either be me or Steve. With the new stuff, with the new album,
Yeah.
it's always me. But
Okay.
that's not because I'm like, oh no, I'm the only one who can do this. It's just the way everything's worked out. It actually works out a bit easier because it means Steve can really focus on the guitar.
Now you've got more of like assigned
Yeah,
sort of roles,
yeah.
and it's just you can concentrate
Yeah,
more.
but no, but around that time, that was when I was starting to get more into production, mixing, like working. Trying to get to be honest. Even back then, sometimes some bands that I would work with, who I would think really were at the time on the same level as you are now. Kind of
Yeah.
like in terms of the gigs you're doing and stuff like that. Even back then, you would sometimes get record labels or publishers would want to chuck money in and go, oh, let's put him in Blackwing for a couple of days, and of course, that just doesn't exist anymore,
No.
I mean,
I'm kind of glad it doesn't.
yeah, I think I'm always telling my students when I'm teaching, I'm lots of my students go, oh, all of our other tutors say all different stuff to you, because basically I'm all for the democratization of music. I'm all for I'm interested in what you can make, not what you use to make it.
Yes.
You know. But then lots of other tutors are kind of like more trad engineer producer types who are like, oh, you couldn't possibly record a vocal unless you've spent $3,000 on the mic. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah,
which I just think why.
Yeah, it's ways you can get around it. I mean, it's like nowadays you don't even have to have a fully soundproof room to record your mic, and you could just have that little gate thing, that little kind of shutter thing.
And look at what we're using here to actually record the podcast. You know, this is basically more powerful than the first studio I ever worked in. You know?
The Beatles.
exactly.
Yeah.
So by that time, I guess there was quite a long time where rather than I wasn't really doing band stuff for myself, I was producing and mixing other people.
Yeah.
I did get into making dance music. I mean, I was DJing a lot and got into making dance music, DJ'd all over the world. The thing I always say to people is, if you want to know what is going to be the next big thing, look at what I've decided I'm not going to do anymore. So if I've said I'm not going to do it anymore, then do that, because it's probably going to be any minute it's going to become really successful. Yeah, because when I stopped DJing, I was like, I've had enough of this. Literally, like within
Chemical
a year,
Brothers,
everything had just exploded, and it was like such a big deal again.
Fat Boy Slim. And all
Yeah. I mean, it's yeah.
So that was like early noughts.
It was
Late
kind
90s.
of from pretty much from after the second Collapsed Lung record, because off the back of the Collapsed Lung record, I did a couple of remixes of stuff on that record, and that was when I started getting. And it was about the same time as it was big beat, which to me, that's one of these kinds of music that is so absolutely frowned upon now. People regard it as like a dog turd on the soul of British musical history, but actually back then, especially Chemical Brothers, they were playing. When they were DJing. I mean, they called themselves the Dust Brothers originally. Even though there was already a Dust Brothers, and apparently the reason they did it was because they thought the Dust Brothers who did Paul's Boutique were cool. So we were like, let's just call ourselves the Dust Brothers. And I was like, okay, cool. That's interesting logic.
Yeah.
But they were like playing, British hip hop instrumentals and like post punk stuff and things like that. So of course, to me, it was like, oh my god, this is totally. I get it. I totally get it.
I was going to ask you, if from like your first, each 3 albums you've done, if you had 2 of your favourite tracks from each one, what would they be, and why would what's?
That's a hard one.
Or one even one.
Well,
track.
actually, the hard thing is the first one is trying to think of 2 favourite tracks on the first one. There's a track, Something Ordinary, which we normally play live, but we didn't play it on this tour. But that's I've always loved that track, and that's got really good Jim. I mean, a lot of this first album, the lyrics are stuff that Jim already had, that he'd already written. So it's much more about like him and his. Because he's from Cheam in Surrey. That's like where he grew up. So this is like the Cheam, the Tony Hancock, where all Hancock's half hours set and stuff like that. So a lot of his lyrics are just all about him and his life. I mean, there's some real like little. And the funny thing is, there's references in like the new record. There's little things he says that hark back to that stuff. So the one I always remember it on stage, is when he says. There's We're Artists, which is the last song in the set, and it's the last song on the new album. And he says, took it back to Ken. There's this line where he says, took it back to Ken. And to anybody else, it's just going to mean nothing. But I know that Ken is the bloke that used to fix him and his mum and dad's cars.
Right.
that he mentioned in songs on the first album.
Okay.
So I totally get it.
Little in-jokes. Like.
Yeah, exactly. So I totally get it. But Something Ordinary on the first album is really good. It's a weird one. I would have to go back. The thing about that first track, I think lots of people are the same, because I just listened to it and I'm like, oh god, we didn't know what we were doing.
Right.
Like I would almost like to. I'm really, the remixed and remastered version of Raw Power by the Stooges, by Iggy and the Stooges. I love it. Everyone else, I think, in the world hates it because they're like, oh, you should never remix something
Too
like
clean,
that.
yeah.
But the thing is, for me, the original one is too clean. The original one is like really quiet and really weedy because David Bowie had supposedly had 8 hours to mix the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And the one that got re-released is basically red lights everywhere. The whole thing is just distorted. I'm like, yeah, that's what. Because I listen to it and I think that's what that must have sounded like in the studio.
Yes.
Like actually, when literally in the room where they were playing, that's probably what that sounded like.
Yeah.
And I'm very much like, so in an ideal world, I've won the lottery.
Yeah.
And I can just basically spend my time doing whatever I want. Would I go back and like re-record and jig everything on the first Lung album? Absolutely.
Oh, they're masters? Were they your multi-track reel-to-reels?
We don't have them. So yeah, there
Who
would have
has?
been, but we
Someone's
don't
got
know.
'em.
There'll be. See, this is the thing we were saying about Eat My Gold before.
Yeah.
We don't even know who owns the rights to that now because
Oh,
it's
man.
kind of changed hands loads of times. So somewhere, I reckon, in a whatever Polygram got absorbed into. So I don't know if that's Universal. It's probably Universal. It'll be Universal or Sony, won't it? It'll be one or the other.
Yeah.
Somewhere in a vault somewhere, there's
Area
probably
51 somewhere,
Yeah,
like.
there's probably yeah, with tape on it says biohazard. Do not touch. But there'll be master tapes of like the first two Collapsed albums.
Yeah.
But yeah, second album, cooler. I love. You see both the tracks with your mum on. And I'm not just saying that to curry favour.
They're good songs, I have to
Yeah,
say.
I mean Ballad Night, the one of the ones that your mum's on. Super proud of that. And then there's TV is Life Elvis, which we do play live. We always the rest of them try and go, oh, let's not do that. I'm like, no, that's our best song. We're doing it. It's brilliant. It's another brilliant Jim lyric. And then there's there's a song Codename Omega on it, which we never played live. It was the only song we ever did which had no guitars and no bass on it. It was I was really insistent about it because it had a really good sample in it.
Yeah.
It's actually I'm totally gonna I'm sure it's not going to do any harm, but I'm totally going to give the game away. But the sample in it is off those like 70s like Hammond organ albums.
Oh yeah.
It's a Hammond organ version of Diamonds Are Forever. So it's like, because it's got this weird, it's almost like reggae. It's like, dun 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 dun. So we just use that. But then if you listen to the original track, it does that cut something. It goes, dun 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 dun.
Yeah, I remember that song.
And we just use that one bit. But I was like, we mustn't spoil the sample. The sample's too good.
Yeah.
So we never played it live. Oh, we might have done once or twice. But that's great. And then on the new album, God, I really love all of it. Yeah, because it's all really fresh.
I mean, to me, it's probably. I think for me, it's probably the best in terms of, like, it's really. It sounds like you've got. We all know more, you know. You've all lived a life, and there's influences coming in from here and there, and there's even like bits of grime there as well.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to say
students,
that's So that Liked It, which is like the first track on the B side. So there's a guy who was a student of mine. He was like, I would say, a mature student. I'm guessing he must be kind of early 30s, I reckon. I'm really sorry if he hears this and he's actually like 25. I'm so sorry. But Jason, or AKA the grime journalist, and he also used to do stuff under him, Sweep Them Galley. He had like a UK funky kind of hit with this track, Sweep Them Galley anthem. Brilliant track. And but he started doing this stuff where he does weekly roundups of like Game of Thrones and the Premier League, but like in a grime style. So he gets like grime instrumentals and he does like the football scores in like a grime style. Fantastic. And then I was thinking about doing a track which was sort of like almost summing up the story so far of the band. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, maybe we could send him the beat and get him to do like a summary, like a roundup. And then I gave him the beat, and so I'd done this kind of grime-ish beat, and I said to him, just roast us. Just like totally roast us. And he really did. It's just literally he in about 24 hours. Yeah, in about 24 hours he just sent back, he's like, how about this? And I'm like, perfect. Like literally he did it and sent it over. That was it. There was no backwards, oh, can you change this? Can you do it? Was just perfect first time. Wow. So that track I really love. And that's kind of a track in two halves, because it's got his bit at the start, then it's got us doing this sort of Jim's song about like I guess it's all about it's about social media a bit, you know, liked it. I don't like it, but I liked it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Who was the guy who introed you guys at the gig?
So that's
That's him.
Jason. That's the grime
Yeah, I
journalist.
liked
Yeah.
him.
He's fantastic. Yeah. That was brilliant getting him to do
It
that.
set the room up great at the
Yeah,
Legacy.
no, it was really because we do it. We always do that first, but normally we just play the track with his vocal on it. So I was like, oh, I really want to do this with him here. And then other one that I'm really favourite track of it, probably the last one, that We're Artists. That's like that's something I'm really proud of. Jim's lyrics are amazing on that, and it's I mean, we kind of joke about it on the night, saying, oh, we're just going to end the set on a downer. Because it is a really melancholy track, and a lot of it is about just the fact that we didn't really know what we were doing first time round, and now we do, but it's not like it was then. This isn't our job.
Yeah, it's a different time now.
Yeah, and and there's all sorts of stuff tied up in those lyrics to do with mental health and the situations you find yourself in.
And there is as you probably know as well, from working in music, different capacities. Like, there's a real link between mental health and being in a band as well, and how that could fuck with your brain.
Totally. I mean, just look at these two here.
Exactly.
12 years.
Yeah, they both, we're all losing our hair because of it.
They're actually younger than you, but this is what they've ended up.
Yeah,
This is what Man Flu did.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm 21.
Yeah.
We were talking about influence, and we've got a tradition in our podcast because we are in a record store, Let It Roll Record, Camden, Kentish Town. Thanks to Kieran to
Thank you.
To let us doing our podcast here.
Yeah.
Very nice. Thanks, Kieran.
Thanks, Kieran.
And we ask our guest to just go through the record and like to choose maybe 3. Today we can have 3 record that
Means
for any reason you like them or you hate them.
Well, had some personal effects in you.
And we can like go back.
Well, I've already seen one. Hang on. Perverted by Language.
Yes. Cool.
Perverted by Language by The Fall.
Okay. So we'll do a little 5 minute.
Before that, we didn't talk about Arndales, and I'll be upset if we don't.
Maybe we can talk after the.
Well, why don't we do that at the end? Is that okay if we do the records at the last?
Yeah.
First of all, for you just put out an album out with Collapsed Lang.
Yep.
Yeah. Where's the best place people can get that?
The only place, other than at gigs, the only place people can get it is if they go to zerohoursband.com, because the album's called 0 Hours Band.
Yeah.
And that will take you to our Bandcamp, and you can buy it either as on vinyl or as a download.
Yeah.
We're super happy with it. I mean, I guess the title really kind of sums it up, like the whole.
Yeah. It's great, and it almost like lyrically, like from that title, it kind of ties in with Arndales. With a lot of the lyrics is about like shopping and shop culture. And,
So, if do you feel like we wrapped up Collapsed Lang for now? Because you're in the band simultaneously, but I do want to talk about Arndales.
Yeah, of course.
So you said you met Arndales. You booked those guys. They were in another band.
Yeah,
from Luton, and they played at the Square.
Yeah, so Andy, the keyboard player, and Andy, the drummer, they're both Andys.
Double Andy.
They were in a band called Thrilled Skinny, and Thrilled Skinny were from Luton. John Peel really liked them. They were. See, they were a funny one because they were a little bit more. I don't know. I always thought they should have been a bit more commercially successful than they were. They were a really good sort of punky pop band, but not like pop punk because I hate that stuff. Like that's terrible.
Well, like Busted.
Well,
no.
I think I prefer Busted to Green Day actually.
Oh, I see.
Because they actually do proper pop music.
Right.
But no. The Thrilled Skinny were kind of like inspired by the sort of the punkier bits of Wire and that kind of stuff, but they had really good songs and they gigged relentlessly, like absolutely relentlessly. The Wedding Present, who at the time were like a huge deal, they kind of took them under their wing and they used to open for them a lot, and they were a really fantastic band. And I put them on. They were on the first proper gig that I put on, and I put them on a few times. I used to go and see them all the time. I went and they supported the wedding present at Kilburn National, which was like an
Yeah,
amazing venue.
Yeah.
And I was like videoing it from the side. I've got I think it's on YouTube actually. I've got videoed it from the side of the stage. So I kind of like knew them for a few years. Thrilled Skinny stopped, and then we kind of lost touch for a little while, like for a few years, and then they kind of reappeared they had a band, and this was an art rocker thing actually. There was an art rocker gig in like 2000, maybe 99, and there was this band on first, the Knockouts, and that was basically Thrilled Skinny -1, and they were just doing instrumental lo-fi, almost like surf sort of instrument, but really ropey, but excellent, really good. And the thing is, as well as all the music, they've done loads of art and stuff. They're all still in Luton. The remaining members, the guys who are in the Knockouts, they do amazing art. The keyboard player Steve does this magazine called Clod, which he's been doing for like nearly over 30 years. And they do amazing stuff there. But anyway, I remember I started to write some songs. So I started working in education in 2006, and I started writing some songs just on my own, just music. I wasn't doing any words. I was just with guitar in the studios where I was working, because I needed to learn how to use Pro Tools, because I got this job and they said, everything's Pro Tools, is that cool? And I'm like, yeah, no problem. And I'd literally never touched Pro Tools in my life ever. So I styled it out amazing, which I think that's the only time in my life I've ever done it. Because normally I would go, oh no, I'm sorry, and then just like run away because I'm English. So, but I totally styled it out. And so as part of learning how to use Pro Tools, I was just like writing these songs. And at the time, I'd been really getting into there's this band, The Intelligence, who I just think are absolutely fabulous. And it's one guy, it's this guy Lars, and he was previous to that he was in a band called A-Frames, and A-Frames I absolutely love as well, from Seattle. Coach Whips as well, John Dwyer from the OC's old band, and there was lots of really interesting weirdo versions of like garage punk coming along, because garage punk is fine, but I'm not super crazy about just recycled sort of rock and roll, and it's a bit bluesy. That just turns me off. I'm not, it's just not what I'm into. Whereas a lot of these acts were doing really original stuff, and then also you could tell a lot of them were like, especially like Intelligence, inspired by The Fall. So that's like that works for me 100%. Yeah. And started writing this song. Then I was just like talking to the Andes, and then I was like, oh, I've started writing this song, and literally I just hadn't even thought about it. I was like, why don't we get together and see if we can play some of them? And then we were like, who's going to play bass? And then so Leighton, who plays bass, he's also like kind of not a Luton guy, but he's from Flitwick in Bedfordshire originally, and he was in a bunch of different bands who I'd worked with. Like he was in a band. I'm trying to think what the first one I would have come across. He was in a band called The Spores, and God, who else? Oh, Gag. So there's a band called Gag, which my mate Rodri started, and then he went on to play drums in the Country Teasers as well, actually, Leighton. And we got Leighton in as well, and it started coming together really well. So that was basically the genesis of it. It was just like I'd already written a bunch of songs, and to this day, the way it works is I demo stuff completely. So drums. I mean, I don't actually play. I program the drums, but try and make them sound. I always program the drums trying to have in mind somebody actually playing it. Yeah. Rather than just program something that you would need to be an octopus. Something you need to be like an octopus and go and play that. Yeah.
Square pusher.
Yeah, exactly. And and we just went on from there. And then because of so we recorded at the place where I worked. We recorded an album, just made some CDs, and then because Leighton was in the Country Teasers, In the Red, the label had done a lot of the Country Teaser stuff in America. Larry, the guy from In the Red, Leighton had given him a CD and he loved it. Like, he absolutely loved it. And then we kind of stopped. I mean, we never going, the band's finished. It was just like we just stopped doing stuff. And I think partly because I moved house and it would have took me like a half hour longer to get to rehearsals. I think that was part of it. And Leighton said, Larry was asking about Arndales, and like would we want to put out like a posthumous record? Because we had some stuff we'd recorded that we hadn't released, and I was like, oh well, then why don't we just start doing it again? So we started doing it again, and then they did the EP, the Dog Hobbies EP, and a single, and then finally, with the most recent album as well. So yeah, and Larry's fantastic, huge fan, and I honestly, we don't sell very many records, but I'm pretty sure that a good chunk of what we do sell is because it's on In the Red and people like take it seriously. So I'm so grateful for that. Yeah. And also Henry Rollins, that's the other man. Henry Rollins, crazy about it.
Yeah.
Like
I can see why.
Yeah, it's great, but it's really enjoyable. I hope we get to play again soon. I really want to write some new stuff. Like I want to get a few new songs, because the only downside is that there was a bit of quite a significant delay with the album. I had some health stuff as well, which kind of slowed everything down. But I want to. So we kind of feel like we've been playing the album for like 3 or 4 years, when actually it only came out like a few months ago. So I want to write some new stuff.
I went to see you guys last summer at Seabright again with Jackdaw with Crowbar, which I'll get to in a minute. But I remember Andy, the keyboard player, he coming down the steps into the room, and I was just walking out, and we literally bumped into each other. He's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. We got a new song. We're gonna play it tonight. We got a new song finally. Oh, actually, we have more than one, but we're only gonna play one." But I'm like, dude, and I really liked it. But I love that. I love that album. And what's your obsession with retail and shopping?
It's just a kind of
because the video for Prestige Pricing is awesome. It's just
one
closed
after
down
another.
shop.
Yeah, closed down shops.
And it really makes you think.
I literally just went on Facebook and said, if you see a closed down shop, just video it straight on for like 5 seconds and send it to me.
Fantastic.
So there's ones from LA and there's some from France and stuff like that. It's
Wow.
But I don't know. It's weirdly, I think that the new Collapsed Song record and the Arndales record are sort of two sides of the same coin. Because with the Collapsed Song record, it's called 0 Hours Band. It's kind of partly about the whole idea of being in a band in 2018, especially being like in our 40s and 50s, I have to say, because Johnny, our bass player, is in his 50s.
He doesn't look it though.
No. I think I look older than the rest of them. It's partly about that, but it's also a little bit about there's a song on that album, Never Retire. Which is basically because we know that we're never going to retire. And the idea of retiring is actually a really modern thing, and how anyone thought that would go on for more than like a couple of generations. It's an amazing con. It's an absolutely amazing con. And then with the Arndales one, I think it's almost the same source, but doing something a bit more like weird with it. So just like, on the first Arndales, the very first Arndales, the thing we did on a CD, loads of the lyrics are literally randomly generated. So literally I would just go on, there was a website that would just do random lyrics, and I would just generate page after page of these lyrics and just go through it and go, oh, I like that one, I like that one, and then I would basically put them on the page and just make little joining phrases. And sometimes you would make like that didn't sound good. You would kind of make it would start to have meaning. It's the boroughs cut up, you know what I mean? It's exactly that kind of thing. And so for me, I think it's the same kind of thing. It's just, and with Arndales, it's always been about like weird words and jargon and stuff like that. I mean, even on the first album, there's in fact some of the stuff on the first album wasn't some of it was like randomly generated lyrics. Some of it was like bad English translations turned into lyrics. Cool. So there was like there was a song on the first album called Regional Treasure, and it was from there was a photo of a sign somewhere in Asia. I don't know where. I don't know if it was China or what, but it was on some kind of like monument or something like that, and this sign said, I'm the regional treasure and I hate noise. And it was just like that just became literally the first line of the song.
What I loved about you guys the first time I saw it was musically and performance-wise, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, but I love early Devo, and I love early Wire, and I love, there's another one I think about the other day. But the tightness, not just in the, I don't mean just that you're tight, but there's this like stiffness going on that I love.
And that's totally what I want.
I have a lot of that the way I play, and if that push pull, and the bass player, and the like, I don't know that not only is it interplay with the bass and drums, which is like cliche, the rhythm section, but it kind of went around. At first impression, it went around the band. This like
it's very dynamic. It's very compressed I mean, not like actual compression, but like compressed
and
into.
And I've seen it 3 times. Each gig had a different atmosphere. The band did. Like the first gig was really pro, and then the gig at Aces and Eights was more punk, was more like wide open.
That was
we played there 2 weeks before you.
That gig was like it was so weird because it was with Ajay and Mark from Down on Adventures.
2 drummers.
I was just like, I can't wait for this gig. It's going to be amazing. And then it just was a bit of a logistical nightmare, and I just ended up having a really bad time. Like it was, and it just I felt so sad.
But you were still awesome.
The thing is, I just couldn't. When we played, I couldn't feel it. I couldn't. I had no idea. I was just like, is this any good? I don't know. Like,
and then the third gig, I've heard of Jackdaw with Crowbar. I've heard the name, and I was like, and then you played. So you had to contend with that because that put everyone in a totally different head than you normally be for an Arndales gig.
So they were like,
that was amazing. You guys have to see it, man.
Yeah, they're brilliant. I want
to play with them. Actually.
They were so the original incarnation of Jackdaw with Crowbar. They were on this label, Ron Johnson, and Ron Johnson was like classic John Peel sort of spiky mid-80s label. There's a band. They did records. But there's a band, Big Flame, who I'm a huge fan of. Like, and it was very much that kind of, I don't know, that sort of the whole ethos of the album musically, of that label. Sorry, musically was kind of spiky stuff. But Jackdaw with Crowbar were totally different because
it's like the Residents meets something.
Yeah. And with Jackdaw with Crowbar, half their records were like kind of spiky sort of stuff, and they had lots of quite political. So not that baby's not a fan of Jackdaw with Crowbar.
It's
all right.
No, he's more into like hip hop.
Yeah, exactly. But
my son who likes the sweet. He's a big fan of the sweet.
But their records were weird because they were half like these kind of spiky, indie-ish sort of things with quite political lyrics, quite snarky, and then the other half were these beautiful reggae instrumentals, and it was just the weirdest combination.
I didn't hear any of that.
No, they were not doing that now, but back then when they had the full band, and but anyway, so I saw they'd kind of reappeared a few years ago, and I saw they were doing gigs last year. Or earlier this year, and so I just messaged them out of the blue. I just said, "Would you want to come and play this show?" And they were like, "Yeah." Like I was.
We could get. Yeah.
I thought I was gonna. I would have to like talk them into it. And so now what they're doing is this almost cabaret show.
It's amazing
with just the two of them. Amazing, absolutely amazing. I'd recommend anybody listening to this if you get a chance to see them.
Definitely.
Like it's really good.
Where can people find Arndales and the record, the website, all the.
We're on Facebook. We're on Facebook.com/Arndales, ARNDALES.
Named after a shopping mall.
Yeah. Well, so in Luton there's the Arndales Centre, and there was also one in Manchester and in Eastbourne as well. So I've got a photo somewhere of in Eastbourne. There's like a topiary Arndale, the block letters. And in terms of where to get it, because it's on In the Red. Kind of anywhere really, good record shops, iTunes, all of that
online
business, Spotify even as well, but it's
do you have any dates coming up with Arndales?
Not at the moment, no. The one thing we really want to do is we want to play in America. Like we just want to have done it, and we're hoping we've got to work on some ideas, but even if it's just a case of we all save up some money and fly over on holiday, and then
just playing Brooklyn.
yeah, well, it'd probably be LA because
yeah.
of In the Red. It'd probably be LA, and just basically do a show with I don't know the Intelligence or whatever, and just
Talk
borrow
to
their
Mike
gear.
Watt.
Yeah, exactly.
I can connect you with Mike Watt.
Yeah, so it's. I mean, hopefully we'll do some more stuff soon. But I really want to do some new stuff. That's the next thing on the agenda. For
And you've
Arndales.
got one gig left for this tour with Collapsed Lung.
Well,
there's
there's Butlins as well.
Oh, yeah, Butlins. Oh, yeah, right, of course, yeah. Well, that's a big
Knobbly
one as
knees.
well. It's a big,
So we're doing this kind of like retro thing in Butlins.
Jim, have fun with that one.
Yeah, it should be quite amusing. It'd be interesting. It'd be really interesting. I mean, I know we'll be good. I know, and everything I've heard about the room that we're doing is it's like 1,500 capacity, really nice stage. The crew there apparently are amazing as well.
Yeah.
And then so we're doing that, and then we're doing like a Christmas show on the 22nd of December in Harlow.
Yeah.
Where?
It's this place called Phoenix Live, and that's in the town centre. And basically, I know it as
The
where
theatre?
my bank. No, it's where my bank used to be. It used to be the TSB, but it's run by a charity, and people I know have been putting gigs on there. It's very small. It's like 100 capacity. I think we've only got about 18 tickets left as well. So if anyone hears this and they want to get in there,
Yeah.
go on We Got Tickets and just search for Collapsed Lung. You'll see it on there.
Right. We got tickets /Collapsed Lung.
So yeah, cool. Well, thank you guys.
And you talked about
We're gonna get some records.
you plugged to us a new studio in Rugby. You should plug that too.
Yeah, well, it's kind of not ready to plug yet, but
right.
basically a good friend of mine, Oscar Ball, who I've done lots of work with over the years, is building an amazing studio. So that's really the next big thing on the horizon for me. So I'm hoping early next year hopefully early next year all will become clear. It's a little bit hard to plug it yet because it's not ready, but I'm hoping maybe get you guys in there.
Sure.
And
I've got loads of new stuff.
and I mean, and I'm hoping eventually what I want to hope to do in there is do the new Future of the Left record in there because because I did the last one at Mono Valley in Wales, and they want me to do the new one, so I'm really hoping we'll get to do it there because that would be amazing.
And you still work at Cosmic?
Occasionally, I've not been in there in a little while, but those guys, so that's the place where we did the Y-Bot recording. Brilliant guys, James and Mark there, fantastic. It's a great place.
We really enjoyed us.
Yeah, it's a really, really good place. Yeah, Cosmic Audio. So if you
quick, man.
Yeah,
in and out.
Anywhere. If you're looking for somewhere to record, they're in Epping. If you just go on Facebook and search for Cosmic Audio, they're really, really good. So,
Yeah.
All
Definitely.
right. Cool.
Anything else? Any other
Oh yeah,
questions?
I don't know shit.
Let's plug
Blah
our
blah
gig.
blah 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 blah. Oh yeah,
Freak
yeah.
him. Let's plug our gig.
Okay.
We're playing in this record shop.
Yeah.
So where are you going to play?
2 weeks from tonight.
Physically, where are you going to play?
He wants to play over there. Yeah, near the shop front.
We got time to mess around with the logistics, but we're playing here 2 weeks from tonight.
Yeah,
free, but book a ticket.
17th of November, Saturday.
there's less than 10 tickets left.
It's free.
Yeah.
Yes. And he's going to have
Apparently.
the whole concept of the gig is Toby's actually going to sit like that
Yeah, the whole time.
the whole time.
It's gonna be sit down.
Yeah, and you're gonna play on a bag.
Yes.
Yeah, with
Whatever that is.
unplugged. Yeah,
With this hat.
that's the worst thing ever. Actually, is when I've had times in the past where people said to me, "Oh, do you want to do like an acoustic hip hop set somewhere?" And I'm like,
What?
"Acoustic hip hop? Fuck off!" Like,
folk people on.
So can we
Ketamine,
end the show with this traditional
we'll
thing
yes.
that we can
Yeah.
give you 5 minutes to choose
And
maybe 3 records.
Lou break.
And quickly you'll have 1 minute for each record to say
Good luck.
whatever you
Worries.
want.
Good
Okay.
luck. 1 minute for each.
I'm going to go and do some
the
fantasy
minute
shopping.
men. Yeah.
Sorry.
We're back back
We're
to
back.
Sorry, guys.
Los Miners.
Yeah,
Lost my nerve.
yeah. We didn't lose our nuts though. We're still all here.
Okay,
So-
so you picked 3 albums.
I did, yeah.
Go for
So it was a tough choice, but I knew that at least one, because I'd seen a full record on the wall. I knew at least one of them had to be a full record. So Hex Induction Hour by The Fall
Right.
was the one that I went for. It's an original.
Mine don't,
it's an original copy,
Press,
like the original pressing. So I'm kind of like, it's only the sleeve, but I want to be careful with it. But yeah, Hex Induction Hour, I'd say probably my second favourite full album. My first would probably be Grotesque, the one before this. And yeah, I just like, we were just talking about it, there's a big chunk of, all the way through to kind of like the very early 2000s. There's loads of stuff by The Fall that I love. I'm not going to lie, not crazy about most of what happened after, came after that, but was always kind of glad that they existed. I just read Steve Hanley's book. It's so great. And it's just totally like, I was just heartbroken that it was ending. It was that good. It was just like, I started to like ration myself a little bit because I didn't want to get to the end of the book because it was so good. It's the most brilliant summation of being in a band.
I was at the Brownies gig in '97. I was at the fight.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting
right
reading what led up to that.
Yeah.
You can totally see
I'm
why.
get it.
Because that was literally like, 15 years of misery finally boiling over. You
could see it.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
It's
crap too.
So Hex Induction Hour by The Fall, and then literally like I would say, I deliberately kind of picked this because I wanted to make it as big a change as possible. So the first Cypress Hill album, which to this day I think is one of the most extraordinary sounding records I've ever heard.
They're one of the bands that still had some of the best bass lines ever as well.
Yeah. It's just there's something about the way this record sounds, like the way the music sounds, the way they sound on the mic as well, because they're both MCs have got kind of weird voices, and Muggs' beats at the time, it was just like nothing else. I can remember the first festival Collapsed Lung ever did. We played at the Phoenix Festival in 1993, and we were heartbroken because we were on at the same time as them on like the jazz. They were on the jazz stage, and the thing is, I think a lot of people, kind of fell off this because of maybe some of the stuff that came later on. This and the second album are just solid gold, like all the way through. And then it becomes a thing where they're playing festivals and they're playing in front of a big like weed banner, and then it goes a bit rap rocky. It's not my cup of tea, but I don't really care because this is still amazing. So as far as I'm concerned, that's their pass. They get to do whatever they want because this is so good.
The Temple of Boom was a great album as well.
Some great, that was Illusions of that. There's a brilliant Q-Tip mix of that when they did on the single that's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, that's a brilliant record. And then the third one, a band who we actually mentioned earlier, Leatherface. So I picked this. So this is this is a single, Not Superstitious. This single from 1991. God damn, it was good. So old. I gotta check that out. And absolutely,
I remember that.
That is it's their like most well-known song. It's a really, really fantastic track, and then a cover of Message in a Bottle on the B-side as well, which is really good too. But I love Leatherface, always loved them. Top guys, Dickie the guitarist who sadly passed away last year, genuinely amazing guy, brilliant musician. Used to see him, sometimes I wouldn't see him for like 3 years, and then I would go to a Sunderland game and he would be there, and it would be like like we'd literally seen each other the last week. It's such a good band. So so that's my selection. And
Thanks for that.
I tried to kind of cover all bases of sort of the stuff that I'm really into. So
you're like an encyclopedia of British music.
Just a big nerd. Just a big nerd.
Well, we need nerds. Otherwise, we miss a lot of things.
I've got one last final question. For Collapsed Lung, if you could pick one straight up hip hop act that you would like to either have support you or play before, what would that act be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I guess seeing as we're in the realms of fantasy, I'd say Beastie Boys with all three of them. That would be the one. I almost picked a Beastie Boys album instead of Cypress Hill. But yeah, that would probably be it, because they're I guess out of the mainstream, they're the closest to us in terms of their outlook. I'm not trying to say we're just like the Beastie Boys.
No,
just
but
in terms of their outlook and their
plays,
heritage.
Yeah, and your band that plays as well, and you mix it up. You're not.
Yeah. Yeah, they're totally, you know, the New Kingdom was the act we wished we could have been, like in terms of the records, but in terms of like what they built, the Beastie Boys would definitely have been, you know, because what they built is just amazing. Like they're just able to basically do whatever they want.
Whatever they want.
You know, that's what everybody dreams of. You know, so
definitely.
yeah. No, I think that would be it. That would definitely be it. We did play with we did an all-nighter in Nottingham at Rock City with Gravediggers once.
Oh wow!
And
that's Wu-Tang.
And Prince Paul. So Prince Paul, me and Jim are just like complete disciples of Prince Paul and his production and all the stuff that he's done. And like we would just kind of every time he would come walking backstage, we would just like, oh, go and talk to him. Should we talk to him? And we just couldn't. Jim went and spoke to him briefly, like, but. My God, yeah, so brilliant, yeah. But no, Beastie Boys would be the one. Beastie Boys would be the one.
Okay, well,
all right.
Well, that's been tremendous. So yeah, thanks so much for coming down.
Thank you for having me, guys. Yeah. I hope you can edit this down into a manageable.
I don't think we need to.
Don't edit.
Yeah, we're gonna keep everything.
Yeah, basically we only edit if I say something that puts the guest in legal trouble. Then we cut that bit out.
You had to do that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks to you, Ant, and thanks to Kieran and Let It Roll Records.
Let It Roll Records.
Yeah.
121 Kentish Town Road. Correct.
Yep.
Is that the right address? 121 Kentish Town Road. Yes.
Yeah.
Just above all the mayhem of
between Kentish Town and Camden Town.
Yeah.
And very nice record.
A little bit, I reckon, far enough out of Camden Town that if you come at the weekend, it's not going to be wall to wall like teenagers with bottles of cider.
No, this is a discerning clientele, and the coffee's amazing.
Yeah, it's all good here, definitely. And and good luck for these last couple of gigs as well coming up.
Thank you so much.
Butlins, and you got the Phoenix.
Go Butlins.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Bingo
Ant.
before the gig.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, guys. Cheers.
Nice one.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.